This is not over. If we have to take this outside with him, it's all outside.
You know, part of me wonders, like, whether he was ever really going to come back.
Nobody can be same long time. Nobody. No Tony Ferguson, no Khabib, nobody. And one day, someone gonna beat you.
When a guy gets KO'd a gang of times, so you gotta wonder, like, how many more does he have left?
Tony Ferguson's time is finished.
Like, there's a lot of people that it gets to a certain point in time, you're like, someone needs to step in and stop this from happening.
But when you've been put out that many, that's when you really got to think, hey, maybe it's time.
In the fight game, nothing changes a career quite like a knockout loss. 1 second, a fighter is on top of the world, confident, untouchable, carrying an aura of invincibility. And then, in a flashbang, it is all gone. A perfectly timed punch, a crushing head kick, or even a sneaky counter, and suddenly, the lights go out. But here's the real question. Why is it that some fighters bounce back stronger, while others are never the same again? Why do we see once great champions go from dominating opponents to looking hesitant, broken, even gun-shy after a single devastating knockout? In this video, we'll dive deep into the neuroscience of knockouts, the mental and emotional scars they leave behind, and the stories of fighters like Kamaru Usman, Cody Garbrandt, Darren Till, and Tony Ferguson. Warriors who found themselves changed forever after one brutal moment. This is more than just fighting. It is about trauma, resilience, and the razor-thin line between glory and downfall. The science of knockouts. To understand why some fighters never recover after a knockout, we first need to break down what actually happens during a knockout. A knockout isn't just a dramatic collapse. It's essentially the brain shutting down for protection. When a fighter takes a clean shot, especially on the jaw or temple, the force causes the brain to violently shift inside the skull. This sudden movement disrupts the neural pathways, temporarily shutting off motor control and consciousness. It is like your body's circuit breaker flipping off after an overload. And while most fighters wake up within seconds, the impact lingers far longer than fans realize. Concussions, microtears in brain tissue, and long-term changes in reaction time are just some of the effects. Neurologists say that repeated knockouts can rewire a fighter's instincts, dulling their reflexes and lowering their brain's ability to absorb punishment. That's why a fighter who once had an iron chin can suddenly start getting knocked out more easily. Their neurological foundation has been shaken, sometimes permanently. The mental battle, fear of the knockout. Beyond the physical trauma, perhaps the biggest battle after a knockout is mental. Fighters are some of the toughest people on the planet, but even they aren't immune to fear creeping in once they've been shut off. Before that first knockout, many fighters truly believe they are unbreakable. They've sparred, they've taken shots, and their chin has always held up. But the moment they wake up staring at the lights with doctors around them, a seed of doubt is planted. Every strike they take after that feels heavier. Every opponent's punch carries the memory of that one shot that shut them down. Psychologists call this a trauma loop, where the brain replays a moment of danger over and over, heightening fear and hesitation. In fighting, hesitation is death. A split second of second guessing can be the difference between slipping a punch and eating another one. This is why you will often see fighters who once pressed forward aggressively start to fight more cautiously after a knockout. It's not always strategy, it's fear. And once that fear takes hold, it can be incredibly hard to shake. Confidence and identity. Breakdown. For many fighters, confidence isn't just part of their skill set, it's their entire identity. They walk into the cage believing they are untouchable, that no one in the world can break them. A knockout shatters that illusion in the most brutal way possible. Suddenly, the man who believed he could walk through fire realizes he can be extinguished with a single punch. That loss of self-belief doesn't just affect their fight IQ, it affects their entire career. Take Cody Garbrandt, for example. When he won the bantamweight title, his confidence was sky high. He danced around Dominic Cruz, made him miss, and made it look easy. But after suffering knockout losses to TJ Dillashaw, he never looked the same. The same hand speed was there, the same athleticism, but the aura was gone. The confidence that once made him dangerous now looked fragile, and with every knockout defeat, his identity as a champion crumbled further. This is the cruel cycle of combat sports. Confidence fuels victory, but once that confidence is broken, it is one of the hardest things to rebuild. The physical consequences, chin and neurology. When fans talk about a fighter losing their chin, it's not just a phrase, it's rooted in real neurological science. Every knockout is essentially a trauma to the brain, and repeated blows reduce the brain's ability to absorb impact. Neurons and protective structures weaken, meaning punches that once would have been shrugged off suddenly start putting fighters to sleep. Kamaru Usman is a prime example. Before Leon Edwards landed that head kick heard around the world, Usman had never been knocked out cold in his career. But after that moment, his ability to take damage noticeably declined. In his fights afterward, he looked more hesitant, less willing to pressure with the same confidence he once had. The same goes for Tony Ferguson, who absorbed years of punishment before Justin Gaethje finally broke him in their war. Since then, every clean shot seems to wobble him. The truth is, neurologically speaking, fighters do not fully recover from these traumas. Once the brain has been rattled enough, it changes the way a fighter can compete. This is why so many careers shift dramatically after that first devastating knockout, because the body simply can't take the same punishment anymore. The fear factor, fighting with hesitation. If the physical side of knockouts breaks down the chin, the mental side breaks down the will. One of the most dangerous shifts a fighter can experience after a knockout is hesitation. Before, they may have fought freely, throwing combinations without fear of what came back. But once they have been put to sleep, that memory lingers. It plays in their head every time an opponent feints or loads up on a strike. This is why Cody Garbrandt, Masvidal, his striking never looked as loose or confident as it once did. Fear creates hesitation, and in the UFC, hesitation is lethal. A fighter second-guessing their own shots is already one step behind. And in a sport of milliseconds, that's the difference between glory and disaster. Physical decline and wear and tear. No matter how mentally strong a fighter is, the human body has limits. Every knockout adds mileage. Every brutal war inside the cage takes years off a fighter's prime. The nervous system doesn't always bounce back the same way. It slows, reaction times drop, reflexes fade. Look at someone like Cody Garbrandt. Once, he was lightning fast, slipping punches and countering with surgical precision. But after getting knocked out multiple times, his chin doesn't hold the same, and his body simply can't keep up with the speed he once had. Darren Till too, his frame was constantly injured, his body breaking down while trying to cut and move between weight classes. And Tony Ferguson, after years of absorbing punishment, no longer had the same durability or physical sharpness. Age, injuries, and the repeated trauma of knockouts all pile up. In a sport where seconds matter, losing just a fraction of your timing or durability can turn a world-class fighter into a shadow of their former self. The body betrays the fighter, and there is no training camp in the world that can reverse that clock. Loss of confidence and identity crisis. Confidence is the backbone of every great fighter. It's what allows them to walk into an octagon in front of thousands of fans and believe, without a doubt, that they will win. But when a knockout loss happens, that unshakable belief can shatter like glass. For some fighters, it's not just about losing a fight, it's about losing the very identity they've built for years. Tony Ferguson is a perfect example. For nearly a decade, he was El Cucuy, the boogeyman of the lightweight division, a man who believed he could walk through fire and come out untouched. But once Justin Gaethje stopped him in brutal fashion, the aura disappeared. Tony wasn't just beaten physically, he was stripped of the mystique that made him special. The same happened with Kamaru Usman. For years, he was invincible, dominating everyone with wrestling and pressure. But Leon Edwards' head kick didn't just knock him out. It knocked out his identity as the unbeatable Nigerian nightmare. When fighters lose that inner belief, they no longer fight with purpose. They fight with doubt. And in the fight game, doubt is the deadliest opponent of all. The confidence spiral. Confidence in MMA is like oxygen. You don't notice it when you have it, but the second it is gone, survival becomes nearly impossible. A knockout loss can send even the most talented fighter into a spiral of self-doubt. Once the belief in their own chin, timing, or invincibility is shattered, it becomes extremely difficult to rebuild. Take Darren Till as an example. After suffering brutal defeats, his confidence never truly recovered, and it showed in his performances. Instead of flowing with instinct, he became tentative, almost questioning himself in the cage. The same can be said for Cody Garbrandt. After back-to-back knockouts, his confidence was visibly gone, and every exchange seemed like he was fighting with a shadow of fear behind him. This spiral doesn't just affect fight night, it creeps into training, into preparation, and even into daily life. When fighters start doubting themselves, they stop pulling the trigger. They second-guess opportunities, and in the unforgiving world of the UFC, that hesitation often leads to more losses, further destroying confidence. It's a vicious cycle. Once it starts, it's one of the hardest things to stop. The mental fear factor, fighting not to lose. One of the most devastating effects of a knockout isn't physical, it's mental. When a fighter gets knocked out, especially in brutal fashion, they often develop what we call the mental hesitation. Before the knockout, they fought with freedom, confidence, and risk-taking instinct. After the knockout, many begin fighting differently, not to win, but not to lose. They second-guess their strikes, hesitate before engaging, and pull their punches just a little bit. This split second of doubt is often the difference between landing clean or getting caught. Kamaru Usman, for example, went from a dominant, pressure-heavy champion to a man who looked cautious, almost reluctant, in his rematches. Cody Garbrandt, too. His once reckless, aggressive style turned into hesitation and overthinking. Fighters know, deep down, that one mistake can put them back in the dark. That fear changes their approach. They no longer fight with the same killer instinct that made them champions. And in the UFC, when you fight safe against killers, you don't just lose your edge, you lose fights. Fear of pulling the trigger. One of the clearest signs that a fighter has never fully recovered from a knockout loss is when they develop a fear of pulling the trigger. Before the KO, they might have been aggressive, confident, and with a flash of lights going out. Darren Till embodied this after his losses. Once known for his sharp, fearless striking, he began second-guessing his offense. Instead of committing to big combinations, he would throw one safe strike and back out, almost as if afraid to be countered. The same could be said for Usman after his knockout by Leon Edwards. Suddenly, he fought safer, more hesitant, never quite unleashing the same confidence that carried him to the belt. When fighters lose that willingness to pull the trigger, their entire identity inside the cage changes. They go from predators to survivors, from hunters to hesitant participants. And in the fight game, hesitation is often the difference between victory and defeat. The psychological ghosts, living with the KO. Beyond the science of the brain, the psychological scars of a knockout can be even more haunting. Fighters often describe a feeling of invincibility before their first big knockout loss. They believe their chin will never fail them, that they can walk through fire and still come out on top. But once that aura of invulnerability losses, he was fearless, marching forward with reckless abandon. After being finished multiple times, though, you could see the hesitation creep in. He would second-guess himself, hesitate on combinations, and sometimes backpedal when he used to charge. This mental shift is what we call the psychological ghost of the KO. It's not something fans see on paper. It's something you notice in body language, in timing, in the lack of confidence to throw with full commitment. Tony Ferguson, another warrior, has taken brutal beatings. And while his chin is legendary, the fear of the next knockout seems to hang over him in every fight now. A fighter who lives with this ghost may train harder than ever, but when the lights come on, the memory of that last knockout sits in the back of their mind like a shadow they can't shake. Neuroscience of a knockout. What happens to the brain? To really understand why some fighters never recover after a knockout, we have to look at the science behind it. A knockout isn't just a dramatic moment for the audience, it's a violent trauma to the brain. When a fighter gets hit clean and their lights shut off, it usually means the brain has rapidly shifted inside the skull, causing a temporary shutdown of neural function. This is the body's way of protecting itself, almost like a circuit breaker flipping off to prevent more damage. But here's the dark side. Repeated knockouts and concussions weaken the brain's ability to recover. Fighters may experience lingering effects like slower reaction times, dizziness, or even chronic traumatic encephalopathy, CTE, down the line. Kamaru Usman, for instance, was never quite the same after Leon Edwards' head kick. Neuroscience explains why it is not just physical damage, it is also the rewiring of how the brain processes fear and survival instincts. Once the brain has been reminded of its vulnerability, it can send subconscious signals of hesitation, making fighters more cautious, more timid, and less effective. In short, a knockout doesn't just take a toll on the chin, it rewires the fighter's entire nervous system. Is there a way out? After a brutal knockout, is there any way for a fighter to truly recover? The answer is complicated, but it is not always hopeless. For some, the key lies in rebuilding confidence slowly, taking time off, changing training camps, and working on new strategies that protect their weaknesses. For example, fighters who were once reckless strikers might reinvent themselves with a more defensive style, relying on footwork and counterpunching instead of pure aggression. Others, like Alistair Overeem, found ways to extend their careers by evolving. He transformed from a brawler with a suspect chin into a more patient, technical heavyweight who picked his shots carefully. There's also the mental side. Sports psychologists, visualization techniques, and confidence-building drills can help fighters overcome that fear of being knocked out again. Physically, smarter training, longer recovery times, and avoiding unnecessary gym wars are essential to preserve the brain. But here's the hard truth. Once the chin goes, it rarely comes back the same. Some fighters find a way to adapt, others keep chasing the past until it is too late. Is there a way out? Yes, but it requires humility, reinvention, and the acceptance that they may never be the same fighter again. So, why do some fighters never recover after a brutal knockout loss? It's a mix of science, psychology, and sheer human vulnerability. The brain rewires, the confidence cracks, and the body starts to betray what once felt unbreakable. For guys like Usman, Cody, Till, and Tony, it wasn't just about losing a fight. It was about losing a part of themselves in that split second when the lights went out. Some warriors find a way to rise again, others fade, and some never truly come back. That's the cruel beauty of this sport. It gives us legends, but it also shows us their mortality. But now I want to hear from you. Who do you think suffered the most dramatic fall after a knockout? Drop your thoughts in the comments below.